The previous session, we ended up our discussion by discussing about the application of relative motion, and we discussed the numerical question. So today we are going to continue with our discussion in the topic of application of vectors. And today we are going to discuss about the vectors on a Cartesian coordinate system. Vectors on a Cartesian coordinate system. So tutaenda kuona Cartesian coordinate system ni kitu gani, na vectors kwenye Cartesian coordinate system tunazichoraje, au tukichora vector kwenye direction fulani na kwenda maana gani. The Cartesian coordinate system ni kitu ambacho tumekizoea mara nyingi. Normally tunachora kwa graph papers, tunachora x pamoja na y axis. The x and the y axis is what we call the Cartesian coordinate. Kwa hiyo kile ambacho tunakichora kwenye graph paper, let's say unachora kwenye graph paper, unachora y pamoja na x axis. So let's say here I have my y axis. Let's say this is my y axis. And then from there, let's say here I have my x axis. I have my x axis here. Kwa hiyo hichi tunachokuwa tunakichora, tunaweka huku y axis. Y axis huku tunaweka x axis. Pamoja na numbers zikianzia huku +1, +2, +3, +4 and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Lakini hizi huku chini ni negative. Then from there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hizi huku ni negative. And then hapa +1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is what we are calling the Cartesian coordinate system. Kwa hiyo hii Cartesian coordinate kama unavyoona, any point ambayo itakuwa kwenye hii quadrant, hizi tunaziita ni quadrant. So we have the first quadrant, we have the second quadrant, we have the third quadrant, and then the fourth quadrant. So tunaanza kwenye hii hapa upper right quadrant, tunazicount kwenda left and clockwise. So hii ni quadrant ya kwanza, quadrant ya pili, wa tatu, wa nne. So tukiwa na quadrant kama hizi hapa 4, quadrant ya kwanza, pili, tatu, wa nne, a point in the first quadrant atakuwa ni positive, positive. Kwa sababu positive ya x, positive ya y. A point in the second coordinate will be negative ya x, positive ya y. A point in the third quadrant will be negative of x and negative of y. But a point in the fourth quadrant will be positive of x but negative of y. So unaweza kuona the properties of the points in these quadrants, they are different from one quadrant to another. Properties za point ambazo inakuwa hapo kwenye hiyo quadrant zinakuwa zinafanyaje, zinatofautiana. Kwa hiyo hii ndio ambayo tunaita Cartesian coordinate system. Sasa kwenye vectors tuna maana gani? Let's say kwa sababu vectors kwenye Cartesian coordinate system tunaichora vector from the origin, and then after drawing vector from origin, so let's say tumechora vector from origin up to point fulani pale, let's say to this point, and let's say this is my vector wangu ameanzia origin mpaka hiyo point. This point is 3,4 na hasa hii vectors in Cartesian coordinate, it is applicable more in mathematics rather than in physics. Lakini you need to know kwamba kwa huyu vector wangu, manake huyu vector wangu ana horizontal ambayo ni 3 na vertical ambayo ni ngapi? Ni 4. Kwa sababu ukiangalia hapa manake utakuta ni kama kuna vertical component ya huyu vector wangu ambayo atakuwa ni 4 kwenye vertical, lakini kwenye horizontal ana ngapi? Ana 3, ambayo horizontal 3. So unaweza kuona hivyo ndivyo ambavyo tuna represent vectors in Cartesian coordinate system. Kwa hata tunapoenda kwenye explanation, you must know what is meant by Cartesian coordinate. So tunachokisema ni kwamba the direction of a vector can be indicated in several ways. Direction of vector can be indicated in several ways. In a situation where the vectors are one-dimensional, there is always horizontal or vertical. There is always horizontal or vertical. The direction can be defined using positive or negative sign. Kama vector yetu ni one dimension, tunavyosema one dimension, let's say tumeweka labda ni vertical au ni horizontal. Kama horizontal ikiwa inaenda right, it is positive. Ikiwa inaenda left, it is negative. Kama horizontal. Normally for horizontal vectors, we assume or we assign positive. Tunaweka positive, tunaipa vector positive if it is going to the right and negative to the left. So kwenye horizontal vector ikiwa inaenda right, it is positive vector, and if it is going to the left, it is a negative vector. Kwa kama tuna vector wetu ikiwa inatoka huku inaenda hivi, hiyo ni positive vector. Ikiwa inatoka huku inaenda hivi, it is a negative vector. Lakini kwenye vertical vectors kama vector wetu anaenda down anakuwa assigned negative, na kama vector wetu anaenda up anakuwa assigned positive. So negative, positive, hiyo ni kama vector wetu anaenda down au up. Hiyo ni kwenye vertical vectors. Hasa hizi ni one dimension, but sometimes you may have two dimensional vector kama huyo hapo. Then how do we assign the sign for this vector? We must have the Cartesian coordinate, ambayo Cartesian coordinate itatusaidia kujua. If you remember kwenye hii grafu nilivyokuwa nimekuchorea hapa, nilikuonyesha kwamba vector ambaye atakuwa kwenye hii side atakuwa ni positive, kwenye hii side ni negative positive, then hapa ni negative na hapa ni positive negative. That is because of the presence of the Cartesian coordinate. So care must be taken not to confuse positive and negative sign indicating the direction of vector with the sign representing addition and subtraction or giving the magnitude of a number. Kwa hiyo tunapokuwa nasema positive na negative, hizi zinakuwa zinaonyesha direction. Positive kama ni horizontal ni kwenda kulia, negative kama ni horizontal ni kwenda kushoto, positive kama ni vertical ni kwenda juu, negative kama ni vertical ni kwenda chini. For two or more dimensional vectors, there are several ways of defining a vector. Kama tuna two dimensional vector, one of these involve representing a vector on a Cartesian coordinate system. So this is one among the methods of representing a two or three dimensional vector direction. Ku represent direction kwenye two or three dimensional vectors, we are using the Cartesian coordinate system. So nachokisema ni kwamba a Cartesian coordinate system consists of two perpendicular number lines called the axis. The points where the axes intersect is called the origin. So from there, kama unavyokumbuka kwenye hii graph yetu, hii ndio point ambayo tunaita ni the origin. So the axis, we have the y axis and the x axis kwenye hiyo Cartesian coordinate system. Kwa hiyo the points where the axes intersect is called the origin. It is usually represented by 0 for each axis. Kwa hiyo kwenye origin y inakuwa 0, x inakuwa 0. The horizontal axis is always referred to as x axis and the vertical axis is y axis. In practice, the axis represents measurements. Kwa hiyo tunavyokuwa tunafanya calculations au tuna represent vectors, axis inakuwa zina represent nani? Measurement. So the two axes form four regions called quadrants. Kama tulivyo discussed, they are called quadrants. So these regions are numbers in anticlockwise. They are numbered. So these regions, they are numbered in anticlockwise direction, beginning with the upper right quadrant, then tunaenda left side. So the position of a point on a coordinate system can be defined by its distance above or below. Kwa hiyo unaweza kuona kwenye Cartesian coordinate hivyo ndivyo ambavyo tunazo sub quadrant. This is quadrant number 1, number 2, number 3 and then quadrant number 4. So kuna positive quadrant number 1, negative positive quadrant number 2, then tuna negative quadrant number 3 and tuna finally tuna positive negative. So hapa tuna positive comma positive, hapa tuna negative, comma positive, hapa tuna negative, comma negative, then tuna positive, comma negative. Hivi ndivyo ambavyo quadrant zinakuwepo kwenye Cartesian coordinate. So from the diagram above ambayo tulikuwa tunaidiscuss, unaweza ukaona kwamba in quadrant 1 both x and y coordinate are positive. In quadrant 2 x coordinate is negative while y coordinate is positive. In quadrant 3 x and y coordinates are both negative. And in quadrant 4 tunasema kwamba the x coordinate is positive while y coordinate is negative. So to represent a vector on a Cartesian coordinate system, we draw its tail at the origin. It is tail at the origin, and then the head, the coordinates of the tip of the arrow defining the vector. So hapa kwenye tip of the arrow, coordinate yake hapa itakuwa ngapi? Coordinate hapa itakuwa ngapi? Ita define vector yetu kwenye Cartesian coordinate system. Kwa hiyo we will have numbers 1 2 3 4 5 6, then 1 2, these are negative, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, then 1 2 3 4. So we have positive y, we have negative y here below, we have positive x and negative x. So kutoka hapo tunafikia mwisho wa kipindi chetu kuhusu discussion ya vectors on Cartesian coordinate. Kwenye kipindi kinachofuata tutaangalia concept ya resolution of vectors. Tutaanza kufanya resolution of vectors. How do we resolve vectors? So nikutakie tu masomo mema.